So I'm going to jump back to the point where we stopped. We kind of explained why we're doing this and for who are we doing this, okay? So now to be more practical in terms of what we're starting, there's two things that we're doing. So one approach that we're kind of looking at is that implementing these specific metrics to show them to our end users. And there's two ways that we can do that. One is through API and the other one is through UI. And the second approach is, at what level do we want to show this? So we talked about the persona at the team level, and we talked about the persona at the executive level. Now the more primary persona is the executive level. So the executive level wants to see these metrics across the entire organization, and not on the team level. So they're really interested in looking at an instance-wide level, or if this is a company that is using the SaaS version of GitLab, they want to see all their groups together, and they want to see all those metrics at a group level, okay? So the two different approaches that we kind of went in parallel was figuring out how we can show this on a group/instance level, and in parallel, actually getting the metrics instrumented, okay? So the way that we've talked a little bit about in the issues, and I don't recall the exact issue, but I think Sean and I had talked about it, was going actually bottom up. So we start from the project level, which is valuable in itself because it's still addressing the secondary persona, which is the development team leader, but it still has value. So showing it on the project level, and we kind of have some of these metrics already in place, so we can reuse them and we don't need to reinvent the wheel. And then aggregating the data, so aggregating it up to the group level and then aggregating it up to the instance level. So I hope that kind of, Vladimir, answers your question of the order of things. So in the specific issue that I linked in the document, can you still see my screen?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So this is the first issue that Progressive Delivery was going to kind of work on, and that's presenting deployment frequency in the CI/CD dashboard. So this is not going to be the final location of DORA4 metrics. The thinking around this is, until we figure out how we want to display everything on an instance/group level, we're going to put it in a temporary location, which is owned by our team, and so we don't need to ask permission from anyone. Why can't I see the things here? I don't know, but let's just go to a temporary project that I have. Let's say this one. And then, so the idea was to go under under
analytics.
Sorry, analytics. So yes, thank you, whoever said that, Dimitri. So just use this section and add the charts there in the meantime. And then we'll just lift and shift them once they're ready to move to a new location. Okay, so that's our starting point, is starting from analytics CI/CD and introducing this new chart that's called deployment frequency. Okay. Now, I
was going to say, can I jump in there, Orid? Because there's quite a lot of things to just talk about there, what you've presented so far. If that's, or would you like to continue and just go all the way?
No, this is your time.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Because what I tried to document in the notes is that there's a couple of different pieces. So one is the presentation of the metrics, and as you mentioned from the outset, that could even just be an API to start with, or it could be an API that gets consumed by some front end. And then there's two other I feel there's two other components. One is the actual capturing and instrumentation of this data. And when I look at the 4 metrics, the first one looks pretty easy to work out where that comes from, but the other 3 all look a bit vague to me as to how we would actually capture them. And so then the other question mark is, do we create some type of store inside of GitLab to store this stuff? keeping in mind it's essentially kind of time series data. So it could grow quite big, or do we, have them somewhere else externally, or do we somehow pull them on request depending on the metric? So I think to me, that's kind of the biggest question. Well, the two biggest questions are, where are we going to put it? But more importantly, how do we actually calculate like numbers 2, 3, and 4? Yep.
Okay. So,
can I leave one comment here? Actually, I looked at how this dashboard, which I just had on her screen, for pipelines work. And what it does is just aggregating the database data on the fly. So just basically grouping pipelines by date and showing the number. So I believe for deployments, we should start with the same thing. And if we ever encounter any performance problem, we can add cache or we can add the persistent storage, but we can figure out later these kind of things. And I would go with the same approach for all other metrics. So I wouldn't care about storing this for now until we actually hit the performance problem when we couldn't calculate this on the fly.
So so I agree with that for deployment frequency, but I think we should dig into how we're going to calculate the next 3 metrics. Where's that data coming from?
Okay, so all fair questions, and let's talk about them a little bit. So specifically for deployment frequency, this data actually is already being collected.
Okay. Yeah.
In the notes here somewhere, blah, 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 blah. Where did it go? We have something called value stream analytics, and they are already collecting this data in a numerical form. I think one of you, I'm not sure which one, asked about just capturing a number and not having a chart, which could definitely be a first stage. Let me just search. Okay, so this already exists in the product, okay? This data that shows number of issues, number of commits, number of deploys, number of deployment frequency for the last 30 days. This already is being collected. I'm sorry that I clicked here something that I shouldn't have. I want to go back to my project specifically, and you'll see that this is under value stream analytics. So this data is already being collected. Okay, so we don't need to reinvent the wheel here. Okay.
Right.
Having said that, there is a little bit of a problem with the way that it's being collected here, because it's counting all of the deployments and not only the deployments to specifically production environment, but we'll handle that somewhere along the line. Assuming that this is A-okay, we're just going to take the same number.
Okay. Yep.
Okay. Now, we already have the number of commits. Okay. So that's another thing. I want to go back to the epic. I am in the epic. No, I'm in the sub-epic. How do I go to this parent here? So under the DORA4 epic, there's a bunch of different issues that Jackie and I had created. Now, I do want to go through each one of the different metrics in the way that we were thinking of it, and then I hope that'll answer your question, Sean. So
thank you. All right. Yep. Great.
So this was the first one that we discussed, deployment frequency, and you can see that it already became a monster and became its own epic. This may or may not happen to other metrics as well. Then we have blah, blah, blah. Lead time. This is instance level. I'm going to skip that for a minute. Lead time for MRs, okay? And lead time for changes. So the way that lead time for changes is currently defined is how long something that I committed reaches production. So I was thinking about this in 2 parallel ways. One of them is we already have the number of commits, so we can just aggregate this number. So just check how many of these commits actually reach production, okay? So in a similar fashion than we did with the deployment frequency. But in my mind, the number of commits isn't that interesting. I think it's stronger to measure the number of MRs. And so I opened another issue for present lead time for MR. So how long an MR was from when it was opened until it actually reached production. That is my definition. I am open for suggestions if you think this is like really stupid or we can count something better. But that was just the way that I was thinking about it.
No, I think that's great, and it actually falls in line with what we do internally at GitLab. So it's easy for us to understand it, as a team.
Okay. So like commits and MRs, I think, are interchangeable. We may start with commits just because we are already collecting it, but I think MR is better, personally.
I think it's, yeah, I mean, commits kind of, I would say, even irrelevant here because they, like, it's just a number of commits in the repository. It doesn't mean that we have that number of commits in production, and yeah, it can be some kind of user branch or whatever. And another point is that I'm not sure how easy it will be to calculate this metric. For example, we have an open time on MR, but it can result in different things when we merge the MR, right? It can be merge commit, it can be rebase. Yeah, so it will build some completely different commit on the master branch, and then deployment can happen like a week after that. And basically it should be like the first deployment which had this commit deployed. So it's not that easy to calculate this metric. It is possible, but I don't know, probably not on the fly. And even in the background, it's not so easy to actually see when commit reached production, and not just merge request.
That's totally
Just
fair. I do know that like a few milestones ago, maybe 12.5 or 6, we had added support for deployment time to production on the merge request widget itself. So we may be able to use that data as well in order to calculate this. This was something that I think Yorick contributed. So we do have that kind of data. So we do know when it hit production. So maybe we can figure out according to that.
If we already have it, especially if we have it, so if we have a couple of timestamps on the database entry for commit, then it will be very easy to calculate. And yeah, that's awesome if it's true.
And so this is something we would calculate on the fly, it seems like. Right? We at this point, we don't, I mean, unless there's performance issues, we don't really see.
If we already have this couple of timestamps, then yeah, we can calculate it on the fly. It might not be super performant, but as a MVC, I guess it will work.
Well, actually, a question already is how up to date should these stats be? Could they be, you know, some type of background process that collects them periodically?
Yeah, so the way that I was thinking of the MVC, but I'm definitely open for changes if needed, was that you could select the last week, month, or year. But if that's a problem, we can always have this data not real time. So that's definitely an option.
Can we take a couple of step backs here, because we were talking now about UI and the dashboard and everything between. And one of the things that we validated in release management that customers were not going to use dashboards like at this point is that the Linux MVC was to make everything like DORA metrics available in the API. And I kind of just want to touch base on your point, Audit, in the beginning around, yeah, we don't really have a place where to store the information right now. We're going to put at the analytics level, etc. So I would suggest, as we're still figuring out how to fetch these metrics and how to make it work with the backend, is to really focus on the API part, because the UI itself, like exposing this, it's something that we can work on and validate in parallel with the customers. I already put together, I actually linked here 3-4 issues with some prototypes that I already worked on in release management and that we validated. And the MVC is really like, here's a metric, here's the static, like percentage, you know, whatever, lean, blah, 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 lead time on whatever. And not worry so much now with the nitty gritty on, yeah, sorting or showing, and even the graphs. I wouldn't go in
I'm
that
not talking
direction.
about sorting at all at the moment. Like
Yeah.
that's the end. The end goal is that you can, we would start with the instance level and you can pretty much filter by whatever you want, by a team, by a date,
Yeah.
by a whatever. So we were thinking, Dimitri had created a mock-up for this, was to make a very minimal UI where you have like the 3 graphs in front of you. You can't choose. You have like a month, a year, whatever, and you can flip between the pipeline view or the DORA4, and you can like just get everything in one page and not make it very, very sophisticated for the moment.
Yeah. Can you go to the issue description and then just kind of open this issues here? Yeah, this here that I have highlighted in the, yeah, these 3. Because we initially, well, now it doesn't matter anymore, but initially we split, right? The 2 metrics that release management would do and the 2 that progress delivery would do. And I'm already done with this, was schedule 13.7. I'm already done with the proposals for the MVC. And yeah, want to build the features at the analytics group level, not project. That was the plan for our 2 metrics. And then kind of think we just have to align, because I saw that Dimitri's prototype had it in a different place from what we are proposing, or yeah, what I have proposed for 13.7.
Yes, as far as I understood and discussed with Orit, the idea was to keep it in CI/CD analytics page under the project view, as that is under our full control. I would suggest in this case, because there's, I would say, proposals for on the group level, there's proposals on the project level. I see a clear progression there where we can implement the project level first, as that is also done, after which we can move in towards the direction of your proposal on the group level and kind of, you know, up a level in that case.
What do you mean full control? Because yeah, it's not like we own the analytics CI/CD. It's shared with the analytics team. What do you mean full control by that?
So
I'll leave that question up to Orit.
Yeah, CI/CD, the only thing that we show there is the pipeline view.
Mm-hmm.
So it's under, when we say our control, it's the ops group. So it's not analytics, it's actually things that we can populate there. And actually, Jackie was aligned with this, so like, I'm surprised. I mean, we said we would start with the project level here and that it would move out. Like, this is something that Jackie and I had discussed before. So I understand any concern if we're like planning 2 totally different things. And I know that Jackie wanted to kind of overcome the instance level, because that's, you know, what people really want to buy at the end of the day. But I think it's, again, okay to start with project and aggregate, as Dimitri said. And I think there was an issue where Sean asked that as well, and Jackie also gave a thumbs up. So that was the plan at the moment. Start at the project level and aggregate the data.
Okay.
When I say aggregate, it has nothing to do with the presentation layer. Like, we didn't get that.
Yeah. Yeah, I got it. I'm just in a way thinking about like not managing, but solving the problem for customers at from an application standpoint. Because right now, yeah, building it at the project level would solve a problem for the project, right? You're still not going to give the directors or the high level persona an overview. And that's the problem that we wanted to solve when bringing things to the analytics group level. So yes, you feed everything. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's 2 different personas, totally, which was how we started. We have like 1 minute left. So I'm going to really try to rush this last sentence. We have 2 more metrics, and I have issues for them on the linked here on the Epic. One of them was restore time. And the way that we define that was, since we have incident response now as issue types, we could just check from when an incident was reported until it was closed as the restore time. Okay, and the last one, I get confused between the 3 and 4, so you may need to swap my definitions. And the last one was to count how long it took to do either a rollback or a redeploy of an environment is the definition of how we calculate that. Because the metric was restore time and change failure rate. So change failure rate is the incident one, I think. And the restore service is the rollback / redeployment.
So those, I know we're out of time already, but those last two, they might be 0, right? For many, you know, at least at the beginning.
They may be 0.
I mean, if there's no outages, then there's no time to restore service,
Yeah,
for example.
that's true. Well, that's awesome. That's like the best metric ever.
Okay, 100%.
Yeah, but please feel free to schedule another sync meeting if we want to hash out more details. I'm super excited about this DORA4 that I think it's going to have a lot of value both to the stage and to GitLab as a company and to our users. So feel free to schedule a time on my calendar so we can continue discussing. Unfortunately, I need to drop to another call.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Reid. Thanks, everyone. Bye.